All right, welcome to a special edition of GeekWire. Steve Ballmer stepping down from Microsoft. From GeekWire.com in Seattle, I'm Todd Bishop.
And I'm John Cook.
Big news that you hear at the end of the week, John.
That's right, a bit of a surprise, huh?
Major surprise. So, did you see this coming at all?
No, because I thought Ballmer had said he was going to stay at the helm of Microsoft until I think his youngest son graduated from high school, right?
That had been the plan.
Which, when people factored that in, it was like 2017 or 2018, I think it was. So we thought we had, 5 more years of Ballmer.
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden we have 12 more months of Ballmer,
That's
or
right.
less.
So for anybody who missed the news here, Steve Ballmer announced on Friday morning that he is leaving Microsoft in 12 months. The big shocker is that no successor has been named.
That's what got me, was that I thought when they had a succession plan that there would be somebody in line, and it's obvious there's no one in line.
There's not. And, a lot of people talk about Steve Ballmer's failings as Microsoft CEO, and there are many. He has some triumphs along the way as well. But I think one of the biggest failings here at the end, and perhaps the thing that will most shape his legacy, is the fact that he hung on so tight right up to the very end that he didn't even acknowledge the reality that at some point, sooner or later, and it ended up being sooner, he would need to be replaced.
Well, yeah, not having a successor. I mean, a successful leader is lining up the next generation to fill in the shoes, correct?
That's right.
And they're kind of out there now. I mean, it looks like it's a free market. It's a draft system to try to get somebody in to try to lead Microsoft. And obviously, a lot of speculation, and we'll be talking more about who some of those people are, which is going to be fascinating to watch.
And the thing is, here you have a situation where for the next 12 months, potentially, hopefully sooner, and I think that's probably a long time frame. They're giving themselves a lot of room there. But for whatever time period they're searching for this CEO, Microsoft is again falling behind.
That's
You've
a
got
good point.
people
Good
who
point.
are out there, Facebook, Google, Apple, everybody's trying to eat Microsoft's lunch. And they're just going to be leaving it out on the picnic table here for the next 8 months.
Yeah, well,
or
not only that, but
there.
yes, maybe if it's 6 to 12 months to get somebody in, but then for somebody to learn a business like Microsoft, which is as complex as it is, and then get the horsepower and momentum going again. I mean, I think you're talking probably 24 months before anything really kicks in and there's real change there. Microsoft can't afford that. Microsoft cannot afford a 2-year gap here.
No. So that is a struggle. I think in the meantime, it's just going to be really hard for the company to regain its focus. And the other problem and the real head scratcher here is that Microsoft just went through this massive reorg.
Which Ballmer probably is the only one who understands.
Exactly. And through that reorg, apparently, according to what Steve Ballmer told Mary Jo Foley of ZDNet in an interview, he was not actually thinking about his own future role. In other words, he wasn't thinking, oh, perhaps I'll be stepping down sooner than later, and maybe through this reorg I should line somebody up to take my place. That thought apparently never crossed his mind, and it's evidenced also by the fact that there's no clear successor from that reorg. There's nobody you can point to in the reorg and say, hey, that's the logical next CEO.
Yeah, which makes me wonder if there's something else going on here.
I think you're right.
Because why, a company of Microsoft's size and history, why wouldn't they have somebody lined up? And why would Ballmer have this big reorg that goes on, and then all of a sudden he doesn't reorg himself out? Or maybe that was the plan all of a sudden, but it seems like it's a bit thrown together here. And so something else is amiss here. I'm wondering if there was something with, there's this activist shareholder that's really pushing to
shake things
up and take some control there. And I'm wondering if that is having an impact. Just one theory. I'm sure there are many other theories out there of why this has happened right now, but it's very interesting.
So the thing that you have to know to understand the dynamics of the Microsoft board is that Bill Gates is not only chairman, but he is in charge. For the most part, they've had outside independent directors, but Bill Gates runs the show.
Well, he's still the largest shareholder and
the co-founder of the company, really the heart of the company still in terms of its legacy. And there has to have been some kind of shift where Bill Gates went to his longtime friend, his old college pal, and said, hey, bud,
no more Rocky Boy.
The writing is on the wall. I think, and that is speculation on my part. I don't know that for sure in terms of what's happened recently, but if you look at the evidence over the years and how Steve Ballmer has been able to hold on despite just completely stagnant stock over the last decade, and then you look
stagnant. It's down. I look back, it's down 40% under Ballmer since he took over.
So it's a kind of situation where you look at the abruptness of the decision, and you have to suspect that there's more going on there behind the scenes.
Yeah. So who's next? Let's talk.
Yeah.
Talk who we think, and play a little bit of forecast here on who we think might be in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had a great post on this here on GeekWire, and I think there's some good names in there, and I want to throw a few wild cards too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So among the company itself, if you look at the executives, I think Tony Bates is one possibility.
Mary Jo Foley's one pick.
Was
as
that
well.
her number
yeah,
one
she,
pick?
She thought that Tony Bates was the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, out of Skype, of course, and that would be interesting.
Yep. Satya Nadella, the head of the server and tools business, is another possibility, just recognizing the importance of the cloud to Microsoft. But honestly, if you look at the existing executives, it's hard to point to somebody who would actually be a logical successor.
Do you think Microsoft's going to go with the more charismatic sales guy of a Ballmer, or more of the technical founder of a Gates, or even somebody that we've interviewed in the past and have talked about as perhaps a great successor, a Ray Ozzie type person that's much more technical? Which direction do you think they're going to go?
I think that's a great question. I think it's probably somebody with strong tech business background, somebody who at least understands a little bit about product development, but is more along the lines of a business leader. One outside candidate that's been floated already is Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer of Facebook.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially after the reorg, to see a woman elevated into the CEO role. Sheryl Sandberg would be one. I know there are a couple other high-level ranking Microsoft employees that were boosted into the executive ranks here in the most recent reorg. You can probably refresh me on some of their names here. Julie Larson-Green is one.
Tammy Reller.
Tammy Reller was the other.
The marketing chief is another possibility. So.
Don't know. They may not be at a level to be elevated here to CEO, but I think it would be interesting to see if Microsoft picks a woman in this role.
What about Reed Hastings of Netflix?
This was also speculated. I think it's very interesting because you may remember when he stepped off the board from Microsoft, I think about a year ago, there was all this speculation, is he going to play a bigger role, or is Microsoft buying Netflix? What does it mean? I don't know. It seems Microsoft Netflix is an entertainment company, and that's a piece of what Microsoft does, but a very, very small piece. And I don't think he has a diverse enough background to run and manage a company that's as complex as Microsoft. Here's the wild card that's gotten thrown into the comments of GeekWire, and I actually think it's a very interesting suggestion. Alan Mulally of Ford.
I've seen that. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, that's a complex business, running an auto manufacturing company, and he's done a fantastic job there. Roots with Boeing here, of course, in the Northwest, connected to Ballmer through the auto industry, which Ballmer obviously has ties to.
Ballmer actually basically fashioned Microsoft's reorg after what Mulally did at Ford. I think that is a super long shot. I would put my bets on Steven Sinofsky, the former Windows chief, which is also a super long shot before Mulally.
I don't think so. I would take Mulally over Sinofsky. Sinofsky's gone. I mean, gosh, he was there how long? 20 years, and then he comes back. I don't think so. I think they're moving into a new era. They want fresh blood, which is another interesting aspect of this. Whether they would go, the hints I picked up from the press release and the way it was worded was, I get the sense they're going to go external. They're going to go outside of the Microsoft domain to get this next CEO, which is fascinating because, as you know, having covered the company as long as you have, those experiments when they've gone outside the company to bring people in have not worked very well.
I got two words for you: Rick Belluzzo. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah. I was actually
the Microsoft CEO or the Microsoft president who was barely there for a year, a little bit more.
Yeah, I just have a sense though, by the way it was worded, that press release, like they have an outside recruiting firm, which was also interesting. Speaks to me that they weren't quite as prepared for this. It's just fascinating. I think they're going to go external, which leads me to somebody from outside the Microsoft realm. But there are several former Microsoft people that have already moved on that I think could also come back. So Paul Maritz is, I think, a really interesting person. Still lives in the Seattle area, formerly of VMware. Very interesting potential choice, and I think that very much plays more to that technical aspect, technical CEO, which should be interesting.
So
and Stephen Elop, Nokia.
Elop's a possibility. I think if they did that, it would have to be wrapped into some kind of acquisition of Nokia that would truly transform Microsoft into a devices company, devices and
Well,
services.
that's what they want to do, right? I mean, that's part of the reorg.
That is.
So,
All right, so let's wrap this up here. Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer announcing his decision to leave. John Cook, good thing or bad thing? Thumbs up or down?
yeah, I think a good thing. I think it's been a long time coming. I think the company itself needs to be refashioned, repositioned. Whether this will do enough, because now this person that comes in actually has to execute on the reorg that Ballmer put in place. Gosh, it would almost be better to have somebody that comes in that just kind of blows the company up the way he or she wants to do it, rather than trying to live in Ballmer's legacy. So overall, though, I think it was time. He's been with the company over 30 years, 13 years as CEO. You know, we've seen what's happened on Wall Street. It's time for some fresh blood. You know, that said, this is really, really big news for the region. I mean, as a whole, and what it means. You know, what does it mean for the biggest software company in the Pacific Northwest? What does it mean for Steve Ballmer and his second chapter? I mean, we've certainly seen Bill Gates reinvent himself as in terms of his second chapter with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What's Ballmer going to do? I mean, he has a chance to really reinvent parts of the community, and we've seen that with what Paul Allen has done and what Bill Gates have done. And here comes another billionaire that's going to have potentially some time on his hands, and hopefully he does more than just buy an NBA team, because there's a lot of stuff I think he could do to really transform the community.
No, that's really well put. I think it is a good thing that they are announcing this, that he's moving on. I do think it would have even been better 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago. And at that point, Microsoft was still in an element of denial. I think if you look at the unveiling of the iPhone in particular, I think that was a watershed moment where Steve Ballmer laughed at the iPhone
we just
on
posted
camera.
this video on GeekWire. It was really interesting going back and looking at that. Yeah.
And laughed at the ability for it to send email, for example. I mean, it's just it was very short-sighted, especially in hindsight. And in the end, I do agree. I think the announcement that he is going to be leaving is a good thing to do now. It's probably about as good as it could happen. It'd be better if they had a successor, and it would have been better if it happened 5 years ago. But it's going to be a fascinating one to watch.
Yeah. Well, Ballmer certainly has a strong legacy and has helped shape the company in many ways. But, you know, there's a legacy here of things that he's missed. You know, as you mentioned, the iPhone. You know, software as a service, I would say they're behind on that. Tablet computing.
They were way too ahead on that, to the point where...
Well, they missed the business opportunity.
They missed the real opportunity when it was actually going to be coming into the fore of the tech world.
Yeah, and, you know, he's spoken here recently about what he thought his biggest mistake was with Vista. You know, you look back through his track rerecord, you know, gosh, I guess it's Xbox maybe, you know, has been somewhat of a success.
That's right.
But, you know, it's a record that is not rooted in a lot of success, really, when you look at it.
All right, we've got a lot coming up on this week's show, including a new app of the week, the answer to last week's Name That Tech Tune Challenge, and our special guest in from the UK to talk about Raspberry Pi, the credit card-sized computer. Go to geekwire.com for full coverage of Steve Ballmer's departure from Microsoft. Until next week, I'm Todd Bishop.
And I'm John Cook.
You're listening to GeekWire on Kyra Radio 97.3 FM, Seattle's News, Seattle's Talk.
So